Hello, 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 hello. It is Trina's World. Welcome to Trina's World, and it is Freedom Friday. And as you see, the pound sign says majority is right. Now, let me say that I just decided to go with this topic at the last minute. Okay. But you know, it is something that was on my mind earlier in the week. So it was confirmation when something occurred that made me say, let's go with this. We need to be free from that thought that says the majority is right. And I believe that has been something that has happened. That train of thought has been going on for years and years and years. That is the misconception a lot of time, is that just because most people says this, because we're living in a democratic world, right? Because the majority is the one that runs things most of the time. The majority is not always right, though, because sometimes the majority create wrong laws. Sometimes the majority are misled. And so, we have to be careful about going with the majority of people, because the majority of people sometimes will lead you straight in the ditch. And so sometimes you have to make sure that you're using your train of thought, and make sure you're not jumping to conclusions, because the majority of people are leaning towards this answer or towards this thought. Because, like I said, the majority can lead you wrong. A lot of times people on the news anchors, they go by polls, and they say the majority says this is going to happen. And they start making predictions. And so, because they start making predictions, they start underestimating their opponents, because they said the majority of people is over here with this demographic. The majority of people is over there with this demographic. So this is how this will be split up, and this how this will be split up. And sometimes we will end up going wrong, because we're looking at the wrong thing. We're looking at the majority. We're looking for the majority to tell us which way to go, when we're kind of confused on which way is right. And so we have to be careful about that train of thought, in believing that the majority know what they're talking about, you know, because the majority of people thought that, you know, the sky looks gray, and so it must going to rain today. The majority of people thought that it was going to storm. But then the truth happened, and there was not a drop that fell to the ground. And so sometimes the majority is wrong, because most of the time the majority is going by some past information. Sometimes people pass information on, and the majority of people will not think outside the box, right? The majority of people will go by what is popular. The majority of people will go by the norm. The majority of people sometimes let society tell them which direction to take. And so, the majority of people sometimes cannot see past now. And so, we just have to be careful about going with the majority, and letting the majority lead us in which direction to take, and which thought to have in regards to this, in regards to that. Don't think that you have to think like the majority just because you feel as if the majority is winning. Most of the time, when people, succeed in life, they're not doing what the majority is doing. They're a little bit different, and they do things a little bit different. They think differently. And so sometimes they present different solutions because they didn't always agree with the majority. And so, don't think that just because your answer is not like the majority that you're wrong. And so I encourage us to free ourselves from the threats of the majority, from the thought of the majority, free ourselves from thinking that we have to align ourselves with the majority. You know, if the majority of people that um, is going to the same school as you is doing this, you don't have to do that when you know in your spirit that is not right. If the majority of people that is of your race is feeling like this, you don't have to feel like that just because you are part of that race. Um, if the majority of people that are in your religion feels like this, you don't have to continue to go with that train of thought. If you have read to study yourself and studied to make sure that you are approved unto God and not man, and you see something that says something totally different than what the majority of people have told you, don't let the majority of people lead you wrong just because the majority of people are popular. So, we have to be careful about the majority because the majority does not mean right. You know, I know that back in the day, in order for some things to take place, some people had to think a little differently than the majority. And so I hope that we free ourselves from that thought of thinking that the majority is right. Don't doubt yourself just because you've um looked at the numbers and the numbers says that people feel this way about a certain thing, and you have more people thinking this is correct. But do know that you can stand alone. You don't have to go with the majority, because tonight there's a lot of people that's playing Mega Millions. A lot of people, but only one. Well, it could be a couple, but not too many of them will. Not the majority. The majority will be losers. The majority will not get the mega millions. So, you know, sometimes you have to think outside the box and don't worry about the majority. The majority can lead you wrong. Again, as I said, thank you again for tuning in to Trina's World. I'm so glad that we can be free from the majority. Yes, catch me on Monday for Music Monday. Yes. Have a great night and sleep tight.